So I did release a Springboks final starting XV video not too long ago. Now, it was met with some praise, some criticism in terms of my selections. Like I mentioned in that video, I'm still pretty undecided on some positions, and I feel like now I've gone with a little bit of a clearer selection in who I think the Springboks will be going with in some of those finals playoff games. Now, a disclaimer straight away, this is not what they will go with in every matchup. I just believe that this is the more likely lineup that we might see in the near future. But do let me know what you think, of course, of the lineup, who you would change. A lot of the changes that I have made have been the ones that you guys have recommended. So let's see how this lineup is looking now. We will start with the front row. Number 1, Steven Kitshoff. I feel like he is pretty well cemented as the starting loosehead prop in these Rugby World Cup finals games. Number 2, I have gone with Bongiel Manambi. And number 3, Frans Malherbe. So that is a change from what I initially selected, where I did go with Deon Fourie. I was picking him off form and because of his sensational game up against the Tongans. But in this case, I believe Manambi is the better choice for starting. Deon Fourie off the bench. I think that is what the Springboks will more than likely select. In the locking duo, I've made no changes from my original selection. Eben Etzebeth and number 4 and number 5, Franco Mostert. Both men doing extremely well throughout this competition so far. Eben Etzebeth bringing that physicality, making 25 tackles throughout the comp. And then also Franco Mostert with that ability of getting the line-out steals. We know now that South Africa are going to be playing France. And if they are able to put that French line-out under pressure, mainly with those steals of Franco Mostert, could be very handy for the Boks. Also making a lot of tackles throughout this competition with the 26, just one more than Eben Etzebeth. Then in the loose forward trio, number 6, I have stuck with the captain, Siya Kolisi. He has made 30 tackles throughout this Rugby World Cup competition. Number 7, there was a little bit of a debate in the comments about whether or not Pieter-Steph du Toit would be starting, or maybe they give that opportunity to Kwagga Smith. I have stuck with Pieter-Steph du Toit here though, giving him another crack in the starting lineup, and that is because of the impact we have seen from Kwagga Smith off the bench. He's a phenomenal talent, and I believe he will get himself some minutes throughout these playoff games. Number 8, Duane Vermeulen versus Jasper Wiese. That one was also a pretty 50-50 amongst the comments. Jasper Wiese, he's been playing some great rugby. Duane Vermeulen, of course, with that experience, in some great form as well. I am sticking with Duane Vermeulen in that starting lineup for what I feel the Springboks are more likely to do, even though Jasper Wiese has actually had more minutes throughout this Rugby World Cup than Duane Vermeulen. I'm wondering though whether or not that's maybe strategic to have Vermeulen fresh for when the finals games did roll around. Number 9, Faf de Klerk. I did have Cobus Reinach in my form XV, but I believe that the impact that Faf de Klerk will bring to the starting lineup in terms of that stability with his experience and his kicking game might be what edged the Springboks more in his direction. Number 10, Handré Pollard or Manie Libbok. I went with Pollard in the original side. I'm almost swaying back in favour of Manie Libbok now because it's the big question mark. Do you want to have that really big attacking impact later on in the game when a team is tired? And normally you would say yes. Or do you want to be able to take it to them early and apply that pressure from the get-go, have the stability of Handré Pollard as the backup off the bench if you do need him, definitely with him just returning from his injury. So that is the direction I've swayed. Manie Libbok in the starting lineup at 10 with Faf de Klerk as the number 9. Now I know that out of the whole lineup that I have switched here, that will be the decision that I think the most people are 50-50 about, but it's a little bit similar to the Manambi and Deon Fourie situation. Do you want that guy with a lot of experience in that starting side, in this case Manambi, or do you want the more inexperienced fellow who can still bring a lot to a game? So I have gone with Manie Libbok at 10, but Handré Pollard does make an appearance off my bench to nail those late kicks. Out on the left wing, going with Cheslin Colby, 3 clean breaks throughout this Rugby World Cup competition thus far. I wouldn't be surprised if they decided to put him on the right wing and Kurt Learinsa out on the left. But in this case, I'm sticking with Colby out on that left wing side as he's a dangerous player and needs to be somewhere in this Springboks starting lineup. In the centres, I did go with Andre Esterhuizen and Jesse Kriel with my original form 15. The more that I thought about that combination, the more I realised it didn't really make sense. Esterhuizen has been partnering with Moody, and Damien de Allende has been partnering with Jesse Kriel, so it would make no sense at this stage of the competition to muddle that. So that is why for the finals matchup, definitely the quarterfinals, I believe it will be Damien de Allende at number 12 and number 13, Jesse Kriel. I feel like they'll go with experience over X Factor because Estes and Kanan Moody, I believe, are the more explosive pairing that could create more highlight reel moments. But Damien de Allende and Jesse Kriel, the consistency that they will give you, and Jesse Kriel's in some brilliant form. That was actually why I picked him ahead of Kanan Moody in that original Form XV. But I would stick Damien de Allende back at 12. And I think that's why I've also gone with Marnie Libbok at 10. Because I feel like that Libbok-de Allende combo is something that works very well. Number 14, I've already mentioned him, Kurtley Arendse. He has had 3 clean breaks throughout this Rugby World Cup. Very similar to Cheslin Colby. Scored himself a couple tries along the way, including doing very nicely alongside Marnie Libbok with that no-look cross kick from Libbok that then led to Arendse scoring. And then the last man in my starting lineup, this was a position there was absolutely no debate about, which I thought there might be a little tiny bit of one, but Damien Willemse, starting number 15. No one was saying Willie le Roux should have been in the starting side, and don't get me wrong, Willie le Roux, he's actually been playing some pretty decent rugby throughout this Rugby World Cup comp, but a lot of people want to see Damien Willemse, and that is also why I've got Marnie Libbok at 10. It's a combination we've seen throughout this Rugby World Cup. It's a combo that we know works. So that is what I believe the Springboks will be going with. Looking through at the bench for the Springboks, I have made a few changes from my original video. In the front row, of course, Dion Fourie will be my number 16, number 17, Oxnard, and number 18, Trevor Nakanye. So I did originally have Vincent Koch, but I believe due to the extra minutes that Nakanye has been playing, as well as his ability at scrum time, he should get the nod ahead of Vincent Koch. At number 19, I've stuck with RG Snyman. His offloading game is the best at the moment from any lock in World Rugby, and also just being that backup option for after Franco Mostert does make his way off the field. Or the other option, of course, is to put Mostert into that loose forward trio if you do need to take Pieter-Steph du Toit off the park. Although I should mention I've got some pretty decent cover for Pieter-Steph du Toit, and that is Kwaka Smith as the number 20. Had to be somewhere. He's been an impact player all the way through this Rugby World Cup. 3 turnovers, 100% tackle completion rate. The man is on fire, and he needs to be somewhere in the 23 for the Springboks in these finals matches. Number 21, I have gone with Jasper Wiese, so still sticking with that 6-2 split. I believe they'll try and manage Vermeulen's minutes throughout these playoff games as well, which may include giving Jasper Wiese the last 25 or 30 minutes of the contest. Now, I believe if the Springboks go all the way in the comp, it will be Dwayne Vermeulen's starting quarters. Semi-final, they will probably start Jasper Wiese and have Vermeulen off the bench. And then the final, whoever's doing the better out of those two will probably get that starting nod. Number 22, Cobus Reinach, the original lineup I went with. I had Grant Williams because of the cover that he does offer out on the wing, as well as being at number 9. Now, I didn't have Faf de Klerk in my original side, which now means with Faf de Klerk in this 23-man side this time, I can afford to have Reinach off the bench as that 9 cover. And I mean, that man is quick. He can go down the wing, no problem at all, if there is some sort of injury. And then the last man in the 23-man side, Andre Pollard. Of course, he had to be somewhere. The cool, calm, collected number 10 to come off the bench late, nail those final kicks that the Springboks need. Could be what gets them over the line. But of course, they have got their game up against France coming up in the near future. Now, I should mention myself and Rugby Itch, we will still have our prediction video coming out on the channel. This is not per se what I believe they will be going with in the quarterfinals, but I believe this lineup is a lot closer than what I did go with in the last video, but I might have a few changes before we film that one as well. But I do thank you all very much for tuning into this lineup video. Do let me know who you would have in your starting XV for their upcoming contest in the finals. It's going to be a great one. The Springboks, they've built momentum quite nicely, getting themselves out of that group alongside Ireland. And now the big question mark is how far can the Boks take it for 2023. But thank you all very much for tuning in. We will be doing all of the live commentary of Springbok games on the channel, as well as previews, lineup predictions, lineup announcements when they are announced, and everything to do with this Rugby World Cup. But thank you all very much for being here. I will see you all for the next one.